What's up, guys? I'm Ben Hart. I'm CEO and co-founder of Qinetic, and we have a very, very special guest today, and I'm very excited to introduce Edward Gober. He's sitting here with us today, and I think we really wanted to get an interview started with him, so to give you guys a little bit more of the background of Ed and what he does. So Ed travels globally to present fitness professionals with the right tools and mechanics to understanding the complex around personal training and sales and the whole sales process. So, just real quick, Ed, I would really like to hear, some of your journey. Like, where did this start? Can you describe some of your journey and, how that brought you to where you are today?
Well, first, thrilled to be here. Thanks for having me. I think my journey or my career span of fitness has been about 20 years to date. My career in fitness started much sooner than that. I was fortunate enough as a high schooler to be to have a successful career as an athlete, which led me to receiving a full scholarship in college to play sports. When I got to college, I realized very quickly that everyone was bigger, faster, stronger. I had spent so much time in my earlier years being able to get by on maybe some smarts and talent on some level, but then I needed to really mature quickly in order to have the success that I wanted to have at the collegiate level. What I was introduced to was an intense strength and conditioning program, nutrition component, and I noticed very quickly that I was able to, again, get bigger, faster, stronger, be more competitive, at the chosen sports that I'd competed in. It gave me a sense of confidence. My performance improved, which I appreciated. So to me, that was something that I hadn't been involved in prior to going to college, but having got involved in that, I found that it was something I was able to, find success in. And so I wanted to be able to bring that to someone else, to bring that sense of accomplishment, that sense of excitement, and the ability to be better than you were yesterday.
Right. So how did you get involved with, in the fitness world professionally, in the corporate side?
So I can remember 2 times in my life where my father was disappointed in me. Both times happened on the same day. I had come home from college after my first semester, again, having had this success in fitness and seeing what it could do for me. And I came up to my father and I told him that that I wanted to become a personal trainer. This was back in 1994. In 1994, personal training wasn't the career that it is now. Right. I think I remember the look on his face of disappointment that I had gone to business school to have success, and then only to see it sort of, be thrown to the wind to become this personal trainer, and then shortly thereafter, I told him that I got a tattoo. And that was so those were both my father's only 2 disappointments, I believe, to date. And they're both on the same day. So but it wasn't. In 1993 and 1994, it wasn't the career that it could be, or that it is on some level today. And I wanted to see that through. I had a vision for what it could be long before it had evolved. So when I graduated college, I trained throughout that period of time. What I quickly understood was that I had accumulated the science-based education. I had a command of the anatomy, the kinesiology, the biomechanics behind things. I had this desperate wanting to serve other people and help them to have the same success that I was having. And what I found was when I entered the commercial health club setting, that although I had this wealth of science-based education, it was difficult to acquire the clientele necessary to have a sustainable career without that business piece, without the sales, the marketing, and the branding component. And again, 20 years ago, this wasn't something that people were thinking about. Personal training was almost an offering that a health club had, and it wasn't, a real profit center or revenue stream at that time. I was completely obsessed with it. Again, having that business background, I would create key performance measures for myself to grade myself whether I was having success. I came up with different strategic initiatives for how to market myself, prospect, brand myself under the umbrella of another brand that I worked for. Quickly had success, built a career to the point where I was making more money than my father was making. So there was a pride in that to say that I had a vision for something that could be more than just an offering, and turned it into a career for myself. The idea was that I wanted to take all of the education piece and the curriculum that I'd created for myself and bring it to other people, make it scalable. So I went to the health club owners I was 22 at the time. And I said, you see the success I'm having, we should make this scalable, replicate this, and then as an owner, the byproduct of everyone's success will be your own in time. And they had no interest in that. They didn't see it what it could be, although there was one person having success. I don't think they believed in the process or the education behind it. And at that point, I quit my job. I was now 22. I was terrified of my father that I quit my job and had no prospect for the next opportunity. But I saw it as something. I believed in what it could be. My idea was to go to all these failing health clubs who I saw needed that injection of cash to grow their business. Right. I also believed then if you could help other people find success and give them the tools to be successful, again, the byproduct of their success would be the owners in time. So I went to health clubs that I knew were struggling financially, built personal training departments in them. This is something that was foreign at the time. Back in 1996, 97, it was unheard of to really measure a business this way. It really wasn't a business. So I would drop systems and processes and staff development that would allow people to arrive at these different performance measures to have success. I've done that. I did that for one particular facility. At that point, news had traveled. They had had success quite quickly. I had taken on another health club, which now was 3 units. I went from one health club to a health club company that had 3 health clubs. From there, it expanded. At 25, I turned around another health club within 30 days, saved it from financial ruins, and bought into it. And then now I had the ability to not only develop the profit center personal training, but really tie in the membership component, also branding and marketing the health club. So now I had, it was strategic and it was a plan on my part. The idea was to be able to go to other health clubs and companies and say, the same strategic initiatives that I'm using to build my own business with my own money, I'll do with yours. There was some sort of trepidation sometimes as a young guy, 25 years old, building these companies, although people saw the success from it was always something to do with your own money. Mm-hmm. Say, I'm willing to put my own money on the line with my strategies. And from there, that lasted about 10 years. My concern as being someone who grew up in New Jersey is that New York City is always like the big brother, or the people that are, it's like you have a chip on your shoulder. Can you be as good as what I thought these people were doing, doing in New York City? Could you compete on that level? Could I go into a highly competitive market and take the same strategies in education that I was having success with in a smaller market, and bring it to the big stage? And in 2004, that led me to New York Health and Racquet Club. They're a 43-year-old health club company. They were having great success for many years. They had had some clubs that were financially fractured in terms of personal training. Didn't have much of an answer for how they were going to turn some of those clubs around. So I had asked for the worst financial situations I could find. To make a long story short, for 5 years, I went from Madison Avenue to Wall Street to the Upper East Side to the East Village and took on every neighborhood in New York City and would turn each club that was financially fractured around within 30 days. Wow. That was my...
Great. I mean, you had a very young start, as you said. You started at 22, and then you started actually getting into these health clubs at around 25. I mean, as you started to travel and kind of dig, I guess, into the infrastructure of these companies, I guess what was the main structure that, how would you actually do that? And then again, they trusted you at such a young age. How did you actually do that? Like the 3 bullet points, I'm sure the audience would really love to kind of hear that.
I think I was fortunate to have success early on. It was something I was, to a large degree, I think you have to be somewhat obsessed with the detail involved. It was something I committed to. I've lived it to this day, 24 hours a day, unfortunately, to many people's frustration. I do this night and day, especially now that I work, on a global scale. But it's very easy now to go into these companies and make these quick turnarounds. One, when you look at it from a 30,000-foot overview, it becomes very easy because the outside perspective is so critically important. I think like any relationship that's dysfunctional, if you know of a person who's been in any kind of dysfunctional relationship, sometimes from the outside you can see all the areas of opportunity or ways to correct things, but they can't see it because they're so emotionally embedded in it. And that's what you have with these business owners and sometimes these key executives, because they create the strategies or the systems or the processes. They own it, and they feel as though it's theirs, and they're so immersed in it that they can't see outside of it. So for me to come in and be able to identify areas of opportunity, and then in conjunction drop what's that Trainer Nation sales system in place and the corresponding education, that's how things turn around so quickly. I think what you find when you go into all these companies, and again, whether it's the single unit health club owner who's struggling or the large companies that will work with 50 health clubs, you know, a lot of things remain the same. There's a limited investment in human capital. So companies find that, you know, of course we understand that the location is critical. We understand that the facility and the physical plant is important. We understand that all of those things add to retention and keep people coming back. But we're in an industry where employee turnover is so incredibly high, and it's because there's no development for our employees. People are given sometimes measures or expectations, but they're not given the direction to achieve those things. So that's where we come in, and we teach this process of how to sell, market, and brand the service, how to take all these individual employees and make them relevant to your user, your membership base, differentiate themselves from their peers who they work alongside, but also differentiate themselves from their outside competitors. And that's the one of the pieces of this Trainer Nation Revolution course curriculum. So that's the idea, making people better than they were yesterday.
Yeah, nice. So I guess that kind of leads into my next question. Like, I think, what do you find that these companies struggle with the most in terms of, you know, with that respect?
I would say there's an absence of process in most cases. People have objectives, but they don't have a process. And the companies that have the foresight to create process don't always have the ability to create the content that coincides with the process. So people may know what they want to see the end result be, and they may even have the ability to determine the direction they need to take to get there. But the content is so critically important. It's being able to give your personal trainers, your managers, your the real content and the substance that gets you to the end result. What's the blueprint or the framework that allows you to have success and to reach that result? Measuring things properly. So many companies have such poor measures in place, if any at all. So sometimes you're moving with no real purpose throughout the day, and I think that adds up at the end of the month.
Right. So you seem to have a real emotional and personal investment in a lot of the companies you get involved in. I guess that kind of leads, kind of one of the questions I wanted to ask next is, what was your motivation behind Trainer Nation? And I guess maybe you can describe to everybody in the audience, what is Trainer Nation and who is it really for?
I think Trainer Nation was founded, I left New York Health and Racquet Club in 2010. Just prior to leaving there, I had been through working through the subprime mortgage crisis. And that 2007 to 2009 period where many companies were struggling. The sky was falling for a lot of people, and we were having success. And with that, I wanted to be able to replicate that. My idea was always to be able to contribute to my chosen industry, to an industry that I felt so passionate about with the highest level of contribution. So could I help one company have success, or could I help the masses? I felt this personal responsibility to the personal trainers because I knew what it was like 20 years ago to start out and wanting to have a career in something that I was so passionate about, but just not having the blueprint to get there, and not having that mentorship. So I felt that responsibility to do that. In 2010, I left New York Health and Racquet Club to found Trainer Nation. There's two divisions. There is a custom consultation and a strategy division, which is that going into the health club companies, taking that 30,000-foot overview, doing a diagnostic test on not only your processes, but also your staff, and finding the areas of opportunity and to make corrections in the process. But now there's that education division, which is that Trainer Nation Revolution course curriculum, and that's a series of 5 courses. It's taught over 3 days. It's a cumulative total of about 20 hours, and it incorporates an intensive practical session with each course, but also a written component too, because we want the owners and the operators to understand that when people graduate from this course curriculum, that they have a clear understanding of not only how to address areas of opportunity and challenges that they're having now, but to be able to identify future areas that are going to, are challenges that are going to come up, and have them be successful and being able to not only identify that, but be proactive instead of the reactive, which is where a lot of companies find themselves.
Right. I mean, I've actually, being a former personal trainer, I've actually looked at some of the material, and there's a ton of value there. I guess one of the questions is, did you see Trainer Nation going as far as it is now? Like, did you see that success when you started the company?
I knew there was a void, and Trainer Nation was really started out of necessity. It was that there was a gap, and although there were people who were doing things, on some level, that whether it was sales or marketing, education for the health club industries, they were almost like these generalists, people who the sales processes or strategy wasn't necessarily related to our service or our industry. It was just cookie cutter sales type scripts and templates and things of that nature. It didn't really apply to what we were trying to accomplish. So to answer your question, did I see it going as far? I knew there was a need. I understood that I had a wanting to help people find successful and sustainable careers, and I believed in what it could do. And I think before we launched, just based on the branding alone, I think we had about 20,000 Facebook fans in the Twitter.
Before you launched?
Before we launched. That people liked the idea of it. It was a soft launch. It was also being able to say to people, I know there's a need for this, and that's what you're teaching people also. There was a definite need for this, but people didn't necessarily know at the time that they wanted or needed it themselves. So there was part of that, but we had a very quick following. I think that the social networks have grown to a couple 100,000 at this point. People believe in it because it's helping them find success, and that's all it was ever about. People had said in the beginning, you only work with these big companies, you only, these big global brands, but that wasn't it. It was never wanting to just help the big guy. It was to help the small guy. I was the small business owner who, I understood that passion for seeing other people have success. If you could take all these individuals, whether it was the group of personal trainers, the operations person, or the PT manager, whoever it was, and give them the direction to find success, the byproduct of all of their collective success would be that these companies and the owners and operators would have the success that they needed financially to continue to grow. So I'm happy to wake up every day to do something that serves people well, and to help them have a career doing something that I wake up every day for the last 20 years, and I can't believe that people pay me to do this. But I understand, the amount of money that's involved, so they have to pay me to do this.
Nice. Well, being a trainer, I could obviously vouch for. There's a ton of value. Like, besides being involved in health clubs, I guess also through certification companies, how would trainers find you and know that this valuable material is out there, and know that you're around for this kind of information?
Well, we certainly have the social media platforms. We have the Twitter feed, the @trainer _nation. We have the Facebook page. We have the YouTube page. So we're connected in that way. Nice. We obviously have the website at trainernation.net as well. But we're presenting, or I'm presenting, on a global scale. At this point, we have not only the live Trainer Nation Revolution events, where it's those 5 courses taught over 3 days that we do in health clubs. And we do those as either closed or open events. So the idea is many health club owners do it as a closed event, and they bring me in to teach that curriculum. They close it off to outside competitors. They just want the competitive advantage to have it for themselves. Some health clubs decide to make it an open event because the idea is that there's now attracting professionals who want this content, and when they show up, they have an opportunity to recruit them and bring them onto their teams. So that's part of it, and also teaching at all the major events. We do the NERSA events, URSA, Forum Club in Italy. Just came back from Dubai and did Rex Roundtables, which is one of the premier events for chief executive officers and health club owners around the world.
Wow.
So putting it out there and giving people sort of the framework to have successes.
Yeah, so you travel globally,
at this point,
to meet with all these, club owners in different industries, and obviously in the fitness industry.
I wouldn't have thought that was going to happen 20 years ago when I was making $6.25 an hour in southern New Jersey. And I would have, and to be fair, I would have paid those clients $6.25 because I cared so much about having those people find success. And it's always been about that. It's never been about the money or the traveling or getting to do all these things, to seem like these high profile things. It was always just about helping people find success. And I always believed that if you did right by other people and put yourself last, that good things would happen.
Yeah, well, I guess maybe we could talk about that a little bit now too, because you've dedicated a lot of your life to inspiring trainers and people in the fitness space, to achieve that kind of success. What is your inspiration for that? What is your inspiration for gearing to that kind of audience?
I think I've taken inspiration from a lot of different areas. I think about a lot of things that I saw growing up. My father was an incredible inspiration for me. He was a police officer, and he had worked in the city of Newark, New Jersey, which, if people are familiar with Newark, New Jersey, it's on any given year the murder capital of the country. It's a very rough city to work in.
Right,
he was from Newark, New Jersey, and I can remember at a very young age having a conversation with him and thinking, why do you do this? You put yourself in danger, you put your life on the line. So, it's this incredibly noble thing to do. He said, to make a difference, and I always remembered that, the idea was to make a difference. I saw how he served other people, and, I had a conversation with someone when I was on a plane to Dubai a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about this and what we're doing, and, on this large scale. I said, well, how did you find this success? I'd like to be successful too, and it's something that they were working on. And I said, success is found when you serve other people. And you put yourself last, and you think, how can I help someone else succeed? And I saw that growing up from my father at a very young age. I always thought that was important, to serve other people. So that was certainly an inspiration for me. I've seen, if I, really think about some of our industry is very competitive. Right. There's so many suitors for our business. We're always trying to find that advantage. It's my job not to stay current, but to stay 3 steps ahead in terms of the education that we put out for the executives and for the management teams and the personal trainers. So that's important to me, that competitive nature and what we do, and to capture market share and to build these great teams. And I think I was always a very big fan of art as a young kid. It's sort of like a personal, motivation or inspiration for me. And when I was a young kid, I had seen this painting that I loved, and not because of necessarily the work, but because of what it symbolized to me. And I had seen at a young age, there was a painting by a gentleman named Verrocchio, and he had painted this painting. It was called The Baptism of Christ. And he was the premier artist, sculptor, painter of his time, and at a very renowned by everyone. At the top of his game, he was at the pinnacle of his career. And along came Leonardo Da Vinci. And Leonardo Da Vinci becomes as a young boy who becomes his apprentice, and works in his studio. And he's between the age of, I want to say, about 12 to 14 at this point. And Leonardo da Vinci at some point is tasked with painting one of the angels in this painting. It's Jesus Christ being baptized. And when you look at the angel, it looks like nothing else in the painting. It's this 12-year-old boy is able to paint this image that is so spectacular and so brilliant and so different than what the greatest person of their time was capable of doing. And essentially, Verrocchio never paints again. He stops, and Leonardo da Vinci becomes who he is. He takes over, and he becomes the guy. And I always thought about it at a very young age. It's a painting that hangs in the Uffizi Gallery in Florence. I had an opportunity to see it when I was in Bologna teaching, and I did some consulting work with a company in Florence. So this painting that inspired me as a child to be so competitive, to say, who's at the top? I want to surpass that person. Right. So that benchmark, how do we stay ahead? How do we have that competitive advantage? I feel like with what we're doing right now, the course curriculum we've created, the processes and the systems we have in place, we have a jump on our competition that is so far ahead right now that we're just pushing forward. We're going to keep moving forward. The content's so unique. There's this, wanting to just keep growing, keep making people better, which is what inspires me. But having the opportunity to see that painting, only a year ago when I was traveling, doing the work that I enjoy, right. A piece of work that inspired me as a 10-year-old boy, but I understood the context behind it and why it was so important to say, who's here? I'm going to chase that. Mm-hmm. And not only going to chase that, we're going to surpass them and make sure that we render them irrelevant.
Right, right, right. I mean,
So
hearing some of your inspirations, and I actually didn't know that story, but now I have to actually research that story because it's actually kind of inspiring to myself. So, thank you for that. I guess in terms of, for personal trainers out there, me being, I used to be a personal trainer for a few years, and I've read a lot of your materials. I know a lot of what you teach, and I've studied that to actually assist in some of the personal training in my business in the past. So I guess one question I have is, what is a very vital piece, or what is the first couple pieces of advice off the bat that you would give to personal trainers, whether they're starting out or whether they're knee deep in the industry?
I mean, being someone who creates this education curriculum, obviously he's a proponent of education. Right. So understanding the need to have that science-based education, that's your foundation. I think where trainers struggle is because they're so immersed in the science-based education, they lack that business component, and that's where I think you really have to. Well, that's what separates you. Mm-hmm. That's where you can really widen the gap between those who are strictly science-based trainers who rely on others. This allows you to create the sustainable career for yourself. It's like teaching a man to fish. Right. If I give you the tools to be successful, you can create unlimited success for yourself. But if you're reliant upon others, whether it be your management teams or someone else dictates your fate. And I can say, I never wanted to see that happen to myself. I knew when I had started personal training as a kid, physical therapy was a career that was, on the cusp of breaking out. And I remember thinking I could become a physical therapist because I loved this science-based education so much. And at some point, outside of owning my own practice, I would be capped at some point, and I would earn X amount of dollars. Or I could go in a different direction and become this personal trainer and work in that realm and have an unlimited earning opportunity if I could master this sales, marketing, and branding piece, which I did by trial and error. As a young kid, 19 years old, I would try to find some way to market myself. Try that initiative in this commercial health club setting. Some things worked, some things didn't. And I came home every night and I kept a notebook and I wrote about the things that were successful. I created benchmarks for myself that didn't exist at the time to measure my performance, to understand if those strategies would be successful. If they were successful, then we repeated them. If they weren't successful, we went back to the lab and found a way to improve upon them. But I think, like anything in life, I think you have to commit to it. And I think sometimes what we find, or what I find, in these major cities, like in New York City, we do work in LA, these big areas, people have their foot in too many different things. I think you'll be successful if you commit to one thing and own it, and work with a passion and a vigor to be successful. I think it takes a lot. It's an incredibly difficult job to do well. Right. Because of that business piece, but I think we've done a good job, and I hope that we've done a good job in helping companies and individuals find that success quickly. Mm-hmm,
mm-hmm. So fitness professionals, I hope you took a lot out of that one there, because that's that was a pretty critical piece you kind of just said in terms of like knowing the business side. A lot of fitness professionals don't, and I've been involved with a lot of them, so they don't have that side.
And it's hard because that's people get into this profession to have success, to help other people, and they quickly find that they find themselves out of the profession because the management or the owners and operators don't value that human capital investment, in putting that education back into their employees. They're quick to purchase the latest piece of fitness equipment. Right. They're quick to purchase the license for the latest fad group exercise class, but they don't want to invest in the people, in my opinion, who are the most valuable. Right. Your employees, they drive your business. Long after that piece of equipment hasn't been used, or traded in, you still like to think you have your employees there, and no one wants turnover. I have to imagine when you hire someone, you own the great responsibility of allowing them to have success and to giving them the blueprint or the pathway to be successful, which, to me was always important.
Yeah, so it starts at the top, and does trickle down, especially in the club space, correct?
I think you own the responsibility of having your employees be, giving them the tools to be successful. I often think, when we go into these companies, we do this diagnostic test on the staff, and we look and we say, okay, knowing our system and knowing our process, who has the capacity to do the work we're going to ask them to do? Who has the willingness and the wanting to do that work? And once we make some, adjustments to the staff, we do some plus and minus, work on that. When we have the core group, now I always looked at it that way and saying, when we have our core group, now we have this landing pad or this launch pad. And it's like having a rocket ship on a launch pad. And when the rocket ship's about to take off, it's pointed in a straight direction. And the ultimate goal is to see that rocket ship, go straight up to its desired target, which is what we want for our employees. We want to see our employees, we have an unrestricted or frictionless path to success. But as the ship takes flight, if there's no education involved, if we don't correct bad behaviors, if we don't allow them to find, or we don't give them the development to achieve the measures that we're asking, it starts to veer off in a different direction. Mm-hmm. And it's very hard to get that back. And we're almost creating bad behaviors from day one. So our job, or my job, is to make sure that not only do we create measures for success for the company, to cascade down to each individual, but we give them the development to get there. And that's why that curriculum is so important. The first course provides the framework for the whole system, and leads into creating a personal branding piece. So it goes back to that idea that if we have a series of 20 personal trainers in a facility, how do we make each one of them relevant? How do we show that they're differentiated from each other and from their competition, or outside competition, and creating that personal brand for them within the facility? From there, I know that there's an incredible correlation between the way you properly qualify someone for this service and the end result, which is having them subscribe. And we do a 3-hour piece just on consultative interviews and solution outcome-oriented strategy to get people to subscribe to the service. It's an incredible detail. And from there, takes them to the third phase of it, which is that hour-long edition or that complimentary session that we know all these health club companies use as a sales piece to get people integrated into the service. And there's 2 hours of content just on how to service that 1-hour audition. There's performance reviews and measures in place to make sure that everyone knows how to get to that end result, which again is getting someone to subscribe to that service, which essentially is the lifeblood for these health clubs. It's the largest revenue stream, which is always frightening to think that people put limited amount of resources into having this profit center be so successful. The health club companies focus so heavily on their electronic funds transfer or their memberships each month, or again, the latest piece of equipment and all those things, when really the personal training departments in all these clubs have the potential to take them to the level of success they'd like to see.
Nice. Well, obviously you're a busy guy. You have things going on back to back. I guess one of the questions I have personally, for a personal side of things, is where do you find time to, for your own fitness side of your life? Like, do you work, do you find time to work out nowadays because you're just so packed and traveling and whatnot? So.
It's challenging. It's certainly challenging. I recently have a new son. He is a year and a half old, which is
congratulations.
Which is great. It's my alarm clock in most mornings, so it makes it a little bit easier to wake up, my wake-up time starts anywhere from nowadays about 3 a.m. to somewhere around 4:30. If he manages to allow me to sleep a little bit longer, my day starts at 4:15. Up and running, because I'm now doing work in Europe. The time difference, makes me, in a little bit more, or puts me in a position where I have to be a little more available. So it benefits that. So I'll wake up at 4:15. I'll get on my email, maybe get on a Skype video conference with someone I'm consulting with or doing the work that I'm doing. From there, I'm usually in the gym or on a treadmill by 6:30. By 7:30, I'm ready to go and start the day, back in the email, back on my conferences, back on the club, working with the clubs I work with here. That lasts until typically about 5, 6 o'clock. And from there, I'll get back usually home, where I start the second round of work overseas.
It sounds like a pretty plugged up day.
It's a lot, but without the exercise, I couldn't keep going. I need it.
Stimulation mentally.
Yeah, I absolutely need it. I know I certainly practice what I preach. But on both the business side and the fitness side.
One of the big questions I've actually had a lot of people ask me to ask you this question, just to get your insight on it, and I would actually like to see what you have to say too. So, where do you see the fitness industry going? Let's say the next 5 years. Where do you see it going?
There's this sort of an insurgence of these micro gyms and the boutiques, especially in the larger markets. So, you know, we've had great success working with companies and allowing them to sort of combat that. I think that was a fear for everyone for a long time. And certainly, you know, us being in New York City now, you know, I think people don't understand the landscape of the business here in New York City. When we go to these conferences sometimes, you know, I'll be in LA for URSA in a few weeks. And, you know, when you talk to people out there, they'll say, you know, they have these great ideas and all these success they're having. And, you know, the level of competition is, you know, is not as great as it concentrated as it is here. So I always think everyone should come to New York City and test their strategy for a year or so and see how they fare. You know, it's incredible. But to answer your question with the micro gyms, I think it's something that's popping up. I think companies that are aware should identify some of these boutiques and these small gyms and understand that they're maybe not as heavily capitalized as they are. I think there's a great opportunity for commercial health clubs to look at some of these boutiques and say, we can offer you a home, and maybe we bring some of those companies or the smaller outfits that won't succeed in the long term to align them with the commercial health club companies and bring them in. Maybe have a great spinning studio that, you know, in New York City, I mean, we can count on, you know, there's got to be a dozen of them, different brands. They're not all going to survive, and we know that. You know, but which ones won't survive and which health club companies can capitalize on some of the great things they're doing? Maybe it's the proprietary technology that they have, they can, you know, get involved with, you know, and bring those things on place. You know, we've done a great job in being able to take these commercial health clubs, extract the selectorized equipment, create these functional areas in the clubs, because in past years, members and clients were defecting to these micro gyms because they weren't receiving the engaging and dynamic workouts in the commercial health club setting. Simply, health clubs weren't designating space for those type of workouts. And when trainers, you know, wanted to be more creative and do more engaging things, they went to the training studios, which brought the members and the clients with them. We saw a lot of health clubs suffer financially, but we're restructuring the gym floor schemes in all of these clubs. It's the big thing in Italy with a couple clubs like that. It was great to see when I was in Dubai. I had the opportunity to tour some health clubs that some owners wanted me to visit, and now they're subscribing to that. I've been preaching this for the last few years, you know, and that's been helpful. It's been helpful because that's a real concern, I think, for many commercial health clubs in these major markets. How do we combat the micro gym? And
exactly.
It's huge. Right. In May, I'm going to do a presentation on that in San Diego for a conference there. I'm going to talk all about some of those initiatives. But that's part of it. I think another part of it, because we have to think about, you know, some of the economic issues. We had great success from 2007 to 2009 when the subprime mortgage crisis happened, solely because all those Trainer Nation processes, the systems, the curriculum was already in place. So while the sky was falling and people were losing their jobs, especially in these metropolitan markets, you know, and people, for every one person who lost their job, it affected 3 or 4 other people who now couldn't afford to spend in these commercial health club settings. But because all of that was already intact, the company that I was working with still had success. In fact, their average transaction price had increased. We had seen more sales. Our Hart closing percentages were higher because there was a process. And there was content to support the process. So it had success. My concern, my sort of Ides of March speech for everyone, if you will, like of what's coming down the road for us, I sincerely believe that we're not far off from a recession in some regard based on student loan debt. In a recession we could potentially see because of that. And if these health club companies aren't in line with their human capital investments, if their employees aren't prepared for that, if we don't have personal training units that operate with a process and measures and move with a purpose each day to help themselves find individual financial success, some of these companies are going to fail. And I think it's the companies that are in the mid-level price points that are going to suffer the worst, because the people who have the means will use the higher tier brands of the $150 to $200 a month health clubs. The people who are more price sensitive will use the budget gyms and things of that nature. It's the people who fall into the mid-level category, the membership that ranges from $60 to $120, $100. Those are the ones that are going to suffer. And if this second recession takes place, I don't think I'm like Nostradamus in predicting the future, but I felt confident in what was going to happen with the subprime mortgage crisis, and I was prepared for it, and I'm preparing for this now with the companies that I work with. with the clubs and with all the individual trainers that come to our events. I'm telling you, plan for this because I believe we're not that far off of something like that. So to me, that's the most important thing. Plan for an economic recession.
Nice. I love it, really.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for tuning in. Edward Gober. Guys, follow him on Twitter, trainer_nation, and trainernation.net. This is Ben. You can always tune in here live. We're going to be hosting more live events, always classes, and more interviews coming up. So please follow the schedule. And we'll see you later.